News broke today that Spirit Airlines is preparing to shut down. So I'm going to explain everything that you need to know, like we're on FaceTime, so that we're all on the same page. So Spirit Airlines has suffered billions of dollars in losses since 2020. They had a failed merger with Frontier, and then they had an acquisition opportunity from JetBlue that was blocked by the government. The government argued that it would reduce competition, that Spirit is this market pressure on these other airlines that kind of drives costs down because they're like the cheapest airline. They position themselves in this competitive market as a discount carrier. And the person who's picking a Spirit airline, like the consumer, when our mind is picking Spirit, which I feel like everyone has flown like at least once, is okay, this is the cheapest one. You're not doing it because you get loyalty points or anything. You're doing it because it's the cheapest one. And that makes it hard. Airlines are, I don't think people realize, a really low profit margin business. Like in a good year, an airline has a profit margin of about 2 to 5%. Now, that's in a good year. We're probably in a terrible year for airlines. Why? Well, the government has shut down, that closed TSA for a while. Then there was a dispute about Homeland Security funding, which shut down TSA for a long time. That led to long wait times and difficulties. And there's just lots of things that an airline can't control that they have to just roll with the punches. But they already don't have a lot of profit margin. So they don't have a lot of wiggle room to roll with those punches, but they have to. Then think about how hard it is for a new person to enter into the market. Like we have these existing airline companies, and they all compete with each other, and that drives costs down. But it would drive costs down even more if there were more competitors. But the barrier to entry is this economic term, meaning like how hard is it for a new business to enter into this market and be a competitor? Well, there are huge barriers to entry for the airline industry. You have to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on a fleet of planes. Planes are so expensive. Then you have to find pilots, find people that, will work for the airline, huge labor expenses. Then you have to get all kinds of regulatory approvals to fly an airline, to make sure your pilots are appropriately up to date, to get approvals to land and fly out of different airports. These are all intense government regulations that are, we want airlines to be regulated. Then you have to engage in tons of marketing expenditures because people don't want to fly on an airline that they aren't super familiar with. Why? Because you're going on this giant plane in the sky. You want to feel safe. Then you also have to deal with all these marketing expenditures because people get really loyal to different airlines. That's why airlines have such strong credit card programs, have mileage programs, because it's hard to differentiate yourself in that market. The only one of these major airlines that tries to differentiate itself kind of successfully is Delta, by positioning itself as kind of like a premium airline. But I don't think any of us get on a commercial airline and are like, this is so nice, this is so great. They're all kind of rough, but that's partially because the profit margin is so low. Then you have to purchase immense insurance policies. Like if something terrible happens, you need massive insurance policies. So it's just really hard to start an airline from scratch, and it's really hard to operate one. You have to roll with the punches. TSA shuts down, weather that you can't control, grounding flights, or as we're experiencing right now, and it was really the final death nail in Spirit's coffin, is an international oil crisis. I mean, gasoline prices are like 30 to 40% higher right now. I'm sure jet fuel is even more, the price is increased even more, and jet fuel is already wildly expensive. And so Spirit was just in a tough place. It was unclear how they could continue going. And again, it's difficult to differentiate yourself in the airline market. Like, why does someone pick one airline over another? Well, it's really just like, what airline do you start flying? When you're like the first one that you start flying, what airline is like, has a hub in your town so that you can fly wherever you want to go. And then also, Spirit is a budget airline, and the American economy just isn't great right now, especially for working class people. So the people that would fly Spirit versus maybe would fly like Delta, United, like the client is different. Like Spirit is younger people who don't have a lot of money. It's like someone who doesn't fly that much and just doesn't have a loyalty program with another airline, so it's picking that one. Their market, their client was the highest hit, their consumer. And so that airline's going to shut down, and it could lead to an increase in prices from these other airlines that are already increasing prices because jet fuel is so much more expensive. And we all like to complain about airlines, and I get it. Like, airlines suck, commercial airlines suck. Normally, like, the service is rough, or like if you pay for a lounge or your like credit card gives you access to a lounge, it's always crowded, the food always sucks. But it is just a hard business to make money in, and it's a hard business to enter, and that reduces competition because it's not prone to have lots of competition. If you want to open a coffee shop, the barriers to entry are much smaller. It requires less capital expenditures. Capital expenditures are what you need to like grow your business, start your business. And they're just much higher for that airline. And I think people tend to romanticize like a past era of airlines and how nice they were like decades ago. But that's not really realistic because decades ago, working class people, even middle class people, couldn't afford to fly. They look so nice in the past because they were a purely luxury thing. Most Americans will fly now at some point in their life. Most Americans will fly many times. And that's because the price as a percentage of our income, like the average income today versus 40 years ago, the price per ticket is a much smaller percentage of your income. And so that's because seats are tinier. There's less good service there. The aesthetic is just not as glamorous as it used to be. But that's partially because now it's more accessible. A lot of things, the price is driven down. And even though things feel tighter, there's certainly things to complain about in the economy and like the struggle, and there's always going to be something to complain about with an airline. But at the end of the day, it's a tough bit.